Hey everybody, Caleb Arthur here. I'm the founder and owner of Sun Solar. Wanted to talk to you a little bit today about utility rate increases. In the last week, my hometown co-op, Intercounty Electric, put in their newsletter that they are getting a rate increase in April. Yesterday, Ozark Electric Co-op down here around Springfield, Missouri, they announced that they're taking a rate increase. City Utilities here in Springfield's talking about they're taking a rate increase. And then you can bet the farm that Ameren around St. Louis and central Missouri, Evergy around Kansas City, and then Liberty are doing rate increases because they virtually do one every year. And so I wanted to break it down a little bit. There's such a misconception about how electricity works and how we charge for electricity. And watching some of these utilities step around the issue of why you're getting rate increases, I think kind of hurts a little bit in their transparency to their members. But I also think they have a hard time explaining their utility language to consumers and consumers to be able to go, does it even matter to me? I'm just getting another rate increase, blah, 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 right? But there's something you can do about it, and it's not just going solar, right? There's something you can actually do even if you don't invest in going solar, and that's just by getting activated. You can get activated on the smallest level by, filling out surveys when they send them to you, if they do send them to you. Going to annual meetings. A lot of times co-ops will have their annual meetings. And then getting involved in, everybody has a boss. I've learned that over the years, even being the owner of Sun Solar, I still have a boss, right? My bosses are keeping my consumers and my customers happy, right? And so, in effect, all of you together make one big boss over the utility companies. But just like in most of our political world these days, they try to divide us to keep us from having too much power, right? So anytime you have collective power, they don't get taken advantage of as easily. I'll give you a prime example of that. Homeowners, if you have a home, your rate for buying your power is anywhere from double to triple of what a business that has commercial rates or industrial rates will pay. And there's a couple reasons behind that. The politically correct answer is that businesses and industrials are providing a service, they're creating a product, and they need cheaper energy to be able to create that product for the consumers, or otherwise everybody's costs go up, right? But I think on the other hand, if a homeowner's paying double or triple for the amount of power that they're consuming, then you're already passing it on the consumers, and why aren't the commercial and industrials paying as much? The main reason behind that is if you go to any of the state capitals or on a federal level, the corporations have these high-paid lobbyists, and they're constantly lobbying to keep their energy rates low. And whenever utilities go to increase the rates, all the commercial groups, business groups, and everything get together, and they fight those rate increases from happening to them. So usually they're exempted or not really given rate increases. And if they are given a rate increase, it's on the demand side of if they go above a certain amount of power, then they're charged for that. Homeowners just take the brunt end of it. And the reason why is because you all don't have a lobbyist organization. You all don't have a say. You could, but most people won't organize and do that against the utility process, not against the utility company. You don't have to see them as an enemy. You just have to see them as, if you're not getting involved, then your best interests aren't going to be served, right? And that's like with most things in life. So here's some things you can do. If you're a co-op member, run for the board. Tell them to put your name on the ballot, and if they refuse to, then you can just go gather signatures. There's entire organizations that are funded on helping people get elected to co-op boards, and if you're interested in that, you can reach out directly to me, and I'll connect you with the groups. It's not something that I'm doing personally, but it's something that groups are doing that I know, and they're having success. When you're a board member on a co-op, literally you vote on how that co-op handles its issues, the rates it charges its members, and the members own a co-op, right? They say it's member owned. Well, then get involved because you're a part owner, right? And if you don't get involved, then don't complain whenever you have all these rate increases or these issues coming up. Let's say you're on city utilities or here in Springfield or Independence or whatnot. Every city is going to have its different, but some cities like Springfield with city utilities owns its own utility grid, buys its own power, resells it to you. I know people that sit on the board of that utility, and they're appointed by the mayor. So if you have interest in that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out directly to the mayor's office. Just say, hey, here's my background. Here's what I like to do. And guess what? I don't think any of the board members on city utilities really have any electrical experience. They mostly are just prominent people in the community or yes men. And I think, on a broader scale, being put on a committee, the governor appointed me to a committee 4 years ago. I don't rubber stamp anything. I want to understand it. I want to look at it. I want to challenge the status quo. And I think that's the kind of people that we need on our board. It's not just somebody that's going to, go on the trips and get their meals and hotels paid for to be on these commissions or committees. I think it's people that are actually going to stand up for what's right. And maybe they don't know any better. And so that's where you really got to challenge yourself to learn the industry that you're representing on behalf of, right? And then the other big thing you can do is, if you're utilities, Ameren, Liberty Utilities, or Evergy Utilities, good luck. They're an investor-owned monopoly utility. They only answer to their shareholders, and you're probably not a majority shareholder, or otherwise you probably wouldn't care what your utility bills are. And so the way you can get involved there, though, is you can call your lawmakers. So call your state reps, call your state senators, tell them what you're feeling. I'll never forget. I know this might feel like it's a long video, but I really need you guys to understand. Before I owned Sun Solar, I was just a $9 an hour police officer. Nobody knew who I was. I was 21 years old. There was a bill that was in front of the Missouri Senate, and at that time, my senator was Mike Cunningham. And people can like him or dislike him, whatever. But this is what happened to me. So I'm 21. I have very strong opinions about this bill that's in front of him. It had to do with the farming community. I was a small farmer at the time. I called his office, left them a voicemail, and it was that night or the next night. I'm driving back from my law enforcement job. It's at night. It's like, 7, 8 p.m. at night. My phone rings. It's a Jefferson City phone number. And this state senator, who didn't know me or my family or anybody associated with me, calls me and says, I heard you called and you had issues with this bill that I'm supporting. And he goes, I want to hear you out. So we had like a 20-minute discussion on the phone. I hung up the phone. I was like, wow. And that might not happen to everybody, but it happened to me, and I was a nobody. So I think it's important to know that if you're not engaging your elected officials on issues that you feel are critical, they won't know that it's important. When I go to Jeff City and I testify on solar bills or energy bills, we've had it in the past where anti-solar bills get introduced, and they will get thousands of phone calls because of the grassroots effort that our industry does. But a lot of times when it's about good solar stuff that can actually help homeowners, there's not a lot of grassroots support. And if they don't hear it or feel it, they're not going to move the needle on it. So there's a second segment here, and this might end up turning into its own video. But I want to explain how kilowatt hours and utility bills and utility rates are done. So to keep it very high level and as simple as possible, when you look at your utility bill, you're going to have multiple charges on there. And if you look at the highest dollar charges, those are usually for your power that you're buying, how many kilowatt hours that you're using, and then you're buying that at a certain rate. Most residential rates, if you're in a really rural co-op that has cheap rates, you might be at 8 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you're, city of Mountain View, Missouri, you might be 13, 14 cents a kilowatt hour. Some of the other utilities are in between there. And of course, as they take rate increases, that cents per kilowatt hour is going to increase, right? Even if your consumption of what you're using does not go up, your bill will still go up because of the adjustment of the rate per kilowatt hour. What I'm starting to see happen, and I think it'll be a test of time if they were right, utilities are for years have been charging commercial customers demand charges on extra power they use during peak times, because that's when utilities are supposedly paying the most for their power. I've seen some studies. I've heard some things. I think every utility is buying power at different rates at different times. But how it's been going in the past, if you are using power gradually and then you have a big spike of turning on machinery, you get charged for all the power in that spike at a kind of a more premium rate as a commercial or industrial user. They're now starting to roll that out for homeowners. Ozark Electric announced yesterday that it's going to start charging demand per kilowatt hour on your peak demands. I don't know if it's going to be certain times of the day or just peaks at any time during the day, but It can be a good thing if you're really energy conscious and you want to, let's say, charge your electric vehicle during really cheap rate hours or really cheap times. But if you're just the average homeowner that just uses their power like normal and you want to use your power at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., you might be paying double or triple the normal rate during those times. And it totally depends on the rate structure. And the problem is electricity is already confusing enough about how it's charged and like, am I getting ripped off or not? I would say that like if we took a poll, and please, if you're in the comments, if you feel like that you're getting ripped off by your utility company, comment so in the comments, because I've had this theory, and maybe we need to send out like a Survey Monkey poll or something, Jock, to our 100,000 plus people in our database that are getting quotes for solar. But like, what percentage believe that they're getting ripped off by the utility company? Because and whether utility companies are doing it intentionally or not, I think there's just a huge disconnect between the reality and transparency of why utility companies are doing what they're doing and how you feel as a consumer getting that done to you. I think if utilities were doing the right thing, you wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of people signing up for solar every year, because that's a way that people can control their own future cost of energy. So they're taking the risk of going solar, believing that it will have a better payback for them long term than taking the utility rate hikes that never cease to end, right? Lawmakers do have a lot of say over how your utility rates are dictated. It's just, do they want to have that power or not? So like in Missouri, the Missouri legislature lets the Public Service Commission oversees rate increases for the investor-owned utilities, Ameren, Evergy, and Liberty. The co-ops make up their own. They're governed and represented by their own board members, so they have total control. Whether you think they do or not, the board has total control. Now, what they have to charge you to make enough money to operate as a co-op and have however many tens of millions of dollars in reserve, that's between you and them, right? That's their business model. And then if you're a city, like City Utilities in Springfield, they make so much profit off their electricity that helps cover other services like water and sewer, supposedly. That's just what they say. I'm not confirming it. I don't know. I'm no expert on that side of it. The other charge you'll see on your bill is your service availability fee or your connection fee. That can range from, $10 a month to, there's co-ops in Illinois that are charging almost $70 a month. What they claim that charge is that that's their minimum cost that they need to charge you to, take care of the lines, take care of the poles, and take care of the buildings that they own, and buy their new trucks and buy their new, $20 million facilities they build every few years. So the issue is that availability charge is widely up and down depending on who your utility is. I have noticed that investor-owned utilities have way lower connection fees and service availability fees, and that's because they're governed by the Public Service Commission and have to prove why they need it. And the co-ops and the municipalities can just throw a number out there and nobody's really challenging it. One of the good ways I've seen homeowners pushing back against cities, counties, and utilities is filing attorney general complaints. That's something that's become prevalent. We went from having customers in our industry maybe filing 1 or 2 a year to there will probably have been over 100 last year and probably 400 to 500 this year. And the Attorney General's office in Missouri and the other states are going to have to start investigating these complaints to a higher level of why our customers are being treated this way, and what is happening. So I do know it's important. I've even seen on local news where KY3 does investigative reporting on people that had, we did a fundraiser for the veterans group up in North Springfield, where they got hit with a $5,000-$6,000 late bill that had been over a year late, and they still had to pay it. And I hear every day of homeowners getting disconnected and losing their homes because the utility meter didn't work for so many months, and then they come back and bill them and want it all paid up front, or they're going to disconnect their meter. So there's a lot of issues out there, and regulating and understanding utilities is not an easy business. I've been doing this 12 years. I feel like I've had a lot of engagement, good and bad, with utilities over the 12 years. I don't think there's some like global conspiracy behind utilities increasing your rates and taking advantage of you, but I do feel like there's not enough engagement from homeowners with the utility rate holder process. And I think that it's that kind of that walled off for a purpose so that you don't get more power than what they think you need. and that they know what's best for you. You know, I've noticed that a lot, not just in the utilities industry, but like every industry, is that the experts think they know what's best for you. And if you let them decide for you, you're always going to get left with the short end of the stick, right? So I think it's important that you get involved, that you stay involved, and that you really do care. Now, only if 5 of you out of the thousands that watch this video actually get activated, then it was totally worth my time, because this isn't for everybody. But I have seen, you know, folks like Frances Babbs up in St. Louis. She gets very involved in renewable energy causes. She had fought her homeowner association over a decade ago, took it to the Missouri Supreme Court, I think twice, has helped craft new legislation that passed that bans HOAs from prohibiting solar panels. And we got that law passed. You know, Senator Eric Burleson, who's a U.S. congressman now, he passed that bill in Missouri. We have had some HOAs push back, and we're in current lawsuits with those HOAs. And I think it's important to set the precedent that when we do pass a pro-solar law, that we're actually going to back it up. So Sun Solar and Renew Missouri have teamed up to push back with these lawsuits against these homeowner associations. But we're doing this on behalf of the industry and the homeowners, because the homeowners say, you know, understandably, they have a right to generate electricity on their own property and have freedom. And I think that's the big thing, right? No matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, you can see why solar has such a massive benefit to your home, your business. You know, if you want to go off grid, that should be your right to go off grid and have solar and batteries and have nobody tell you that you can't do that. If you want to tie back into the grid and you want a fair rate for the energy you're putting back into the grid that they're reselling to your neighbors, you should be able to do that. Cities and counties with their permitting and their craziness of wanting to overstep what authority they have to try to dictate how the industry runs, that needs to be throttled back. We're introducing, you know, multiple solar bills this year in Missouri, and the only way those kind of things really ever get passed is by grassroots getting behind it and supporting it, the industry getting behind it and supporting it. There is so many elected officials in Missouri that support what we're doing, but it takes, you know, a strong majority to get anything done. It's so hard to get bills passed. When we got a couple bills passed a few years ago, you know, it'd taken me 4 to 5 years of consistently going to Jeff City to get it passed. But it was to right a wrong that was done, you know, to Sun Solar by the state of Missouri, you know, auditing us, coming to us and saying, you know, this is like a whole nother segment that Jock can like cut off and put as a video. But, you know, I decided that I want to get involved in politics in 2017. So I was going to run for the state Senate seat that was empty in Missouri, in Springfield, Missouri, because of term limits. And I ended up dropping out of the race. The company wasn't growing. We ended up getting pregnant with a 5th child. Me and my wife did. And so I decided that it was best not to run during that time with, you know, having little kids in the house and having a business to run. But amazingly, the state came and audited me 3 months after dropping out of the race, and magically I owed them $500,000 in taxes that I didn't know. And so we fought it for 3 years, ended up getting an okay settlement, not a great settlement with the state. And that really rubbed me the wrong way, that, you know, I was already faithfully paying taxes, but they wanted more. Luckily, most of those people at Department of Revenue are either gone or don't have the control to do that to businesses anymore. We have a new Department of Revenue director. We have new staff in there that were, you know, business owners, elected officials that got appointed over there, and they're all great. I've been working with them. I never thought after going through my issue that I would ever say that working with the Department of Revenue in Missouri is great. You might have a differing opinion, but since there's been leadership change, I've seen some big movements there. But make a long story short, I met with my local state senator. I told him how I was wronged and how utilities could build solar farms and put solar on your home and not pay taxes. I was being double taxed by doing that. And so they righted a wrong. And the Missouri legislature, the House, the Senate, they came together. They each passed their own bills. The governor signed in the law. We've talked about it before, about my family going up and the governor having us sign in the bill and everything. That was a really special occasion. But if you don't get involved and you don't make your voice heard, nothing's going to happen, right? And everybody told me I did not stand a chance of getting a use tax, sales tax exemption passed for the solar industry. And it literally was just me going and telling my story. you think about, oh, you have to, go donate and you have to go get activated and you have to do this and you have to do that. No, I was just a business owner, and I had a local state senator who did not like businesses getting taken advantage of. Now, most of these elected officials do not like homeowners getting taken advantage of. But if you do not make your voice heard, if you do not get involved, they will not know. So, long story short, you've got to really understand what's happening with your energy rates. And if you don't want to continue, you've got two options, right? If you don't want to continue to have massive rate increases, because your utility bills, if they're not already, are going to be more expensive than your mortgage payment or your rent payment, which is insane to think about, right? That's not how energy costs were years ago. You could blame renewable energy, but my thing is the co-ops haven't moved to renewable energy, and City Utilities hasn't built a solar farm in 5, 6, 7 years. Why are their rates going up? They're not investing in renewable energy, right? So is their fossil fuel cost going up? Is their cost of doing business going up? They can't blame renewables. So that argument's out. But here's the thing. You have two options. You either get involved. Well, I guess you have three options. You either get involved and you help make change at the local level that you can. You go solar and just get rid of your utility bill. You'll still have your connection fee in most places, but you can get rid of your utility usage. So you can, get rid of anywhere between 80 and 95% of your existing utility bill. Or you do nothing and you believe that the monopoly utilities have your best interests at heart and that you're going to go along for a ride with them for the next 25 years plus 100 years, however long you're going to be, renting your utility bills from them, your utility rates from them. So, 12 years ago, I started this company to give people a choice. I gave myself a choice. I went off grid. I give other people a choice to go off grid or to, offset their utility bill and stay on the grid. And so I think it's important that I don't just tell you like, oh, you have to go solar. Like, you don't have to go solar, but if you don't want the outcome of your utility rates quadrupling or more over the next 10, 15 years, then you have to get involved and you have to change how they run as a utility. And there's nothing wrong with business models changing, right? But the utility business model has been the same since utilities were created and since electricity started being generated. And if they don't change their business model, something's going to implode. I can see it happening. I mean, they're not going to have total dominant control. Here's my take on it. Years ago, I was asked to come to a co-op board meeting and explain how solar and batteries work to the co-op board members, and I was more than happy to because I'm a co-op member myself, and I believe in the co-op structure. I don't believe that Missouri's is set up right because they're actually introducing anti-solar bills every year to try to keep people from going solar versus just figuring out how to live with it and work with it in their business model. They just want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight it, which is insane to me, but that's what the boards are voting on, right? You go talk to the head co-op, they're doing what the boards are voting. So the problem is the boards are getting scared because they're being told things that aren't true. They're voting on to attack solar. And so it's just this vicious cycle. And then they listen to videos like this where they think I'm attacking the co-op. And then they go, see, right there, here's a talking point from the biggest solar guy in the state. This is why we need to attack solar because they're attacking us, right? And it just creates this vicious cycle. So that's why people that aren't in the solar industry have to get involved so that they can say, hey, let's try to be the adults in the room and figure out how to do this, right? And I've been doing that from the solar side the last few years, but the co-ops just can't really negotiate, right? Cities can negotiate, investor-owned utilities can negotiate, so talked enough about that. But I do think it's important that you realize what your options are and what you can do. And I think this is just a small start, right? You could say it with energy. You can say it with food. You could say it with interest rates, right? I mean, we have people in our country that have a lot of money and power that think that they know what's best for us. And we either keep working on banding together as homeowners, as citizens, as non-big corporate lobbyists, and we figure out how to rally our power and maybe tackle one thing at a time, right? Let's tackle energy. Let's tackle the food issues. Let's tackle the gas cost issues. Let's tackle home cost issues. Let's tackle inflation, right? We don't need the Federal Reserve to be, the overlord making decisions on how to handle our country. We don't need bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. that are unelected telling elected officials how our government's going to run and how it's going to affect our lives, right? So get involved at your local level, city council, county commission, state representative, state senator, mayor, governor. You don't have to go to DC to make a change, right? I've been to DC once and I've affected huge amounts of change. The only reason I went to DC is I was invited for a swearing in ceremony for Eric Burleson and Eric Schmidt. And I wanted to go see that because that seemed like a very honorable thing to do is watch that process happen. I don't necessarily want to go back to Washington, D.C. a bunch, but I think it's one of those things that it's proof that you can make a change, you can make a difference. You just have to get activated and you have to care about what's happening in your life. If you don't want to, that's fine, but don't get so upset when things are happening that you don't agree with if you're not willing to put in some sweat equity to help change it. You can obviously always comment and we can, message you. You can message us directly on our social media platforms, but I think it's important for us to take back that power.